Next tonight, urban crime rates. Despite the widespread perception that crime is at epidemic proportions, some rates are actually declining. A survey by the New York City Police Department found that San Francisco had the largest decrease. Correspondent Spencer Michaels reports on the reasons.
For 28 years, Bruce Maravich has been a San Francisco cop. Today, he's the lieutenant who runs the Crime Prevention Unit, a newly organized group of plainclothes police who say their job is to fight crime about to happen, from auto theft to gang actions. The unit is a key element in the city's new stepped-up efforts at crime control. It seems to be working. The city's felony crime rate dropped last year by 25%. Maravich exhorts his officers to be relentless in pursuing suspects.
As soon as they do anything wrong, ergo drinking in the car, smoking weed, running a red light, expired reds, right, whatever they're doing, running a red light, then make a stop and do your investigations on it, right?
Police say members of San Francisco gangs are heavily involved in drug dealing and shootings, crimes that helped the city's and the state's crime rate soar during the crack cocaine epidemic in the 1980s. But in the last 2 years, the numbers are down, and Maravich thinks he knows what's going on from first-hand experience.
I was in the Mission gang as a kid. I was a gangster when I was in the Mission when I was a kid in the early 50s. I ran with the Mission gang down here, all right? So I was so I understand what's going on. You got to deal with them on their level. You got to talk to them. You can't go in there and deal with them in hate. They ain't going to have nothing to say to you.
Maravich predicts the constant pressure on the gang members will cut crime in half.
They come in more narc cars, and they're just more cops, I guess.
Does it keep the lid on? Does it prevent crimes from happening?
Yep. They're more cops, and everybody just scared to do things.
Nearby residents scoff at the statistics showing a crime decrease.
It sounds like you don't believe the crime rate.
No, definitely not. I find these bullets on the street in front of my house. This gentleman has, she has, we all have. It's just a common, everyday occurrence.
Sunday morning at 3 a.m., somebody was shot and killed. At 2 p.m. Sunday afternoon, somebody was shot and I believe died in the corner of the park. And about 45 minutes after that, somebody was stabbed. If that's crime down, I would not want to live where there's high crime.
At City Hall, Mayor Frank Jordan admits that even with stepped-up police action, gangs, drugs, and violence are tough to stop in the Mission District or elsewhere.
Yes, crime is down, but to many people, it's not down if they have been victimized yesterday or last week. You constantly have to go out there and bend and shift and shape and be flexible, continue to attack the problem, because you never can say that it's going to be totally resolved. It's impossible.
Officers were struck by the vehicle and possibly shot at by the occupants. Drivers no more pressed.
In the past 2 years, San Francisco's police department has changed its basic philosophy, which for decades emphasized service to residents. Now, according to Police Chief Tony Rivera, it is to actively prevent crime, even if that means not answering every neighborhood call.
We're the first major police department that has moved from a service priority to a crime control priority.
What do you sacrifice in that situation?
Well, sometimes delays on calls for service, alternative ways of handling complaints, and simply not responding to things that we've responded to in the past.
Commander Dennis Martell says the department is willing to risk annoying citizens by delays or even taking citizen reports on the phone in order to control crime.
Let me give you one quick example. Somebody comes home at the end of the day and they find out that their apartment or their home has been burglarized. The crime is already 3-4 hours old. It might make the aggrieved citizen who just got, burglarized happier if we get there in 5 minutes. But in terms of solving that crime, it's not going to make us any more effective. Hi, how are you?
On the streets, the new philosophy has produced a series of specialized operations. One of them is the Monthly Enforcement Project. Each month, police target a specific neighborhood. For instance, around Chinese New Year, gambling, extortion, and gang activity usually escalate in Chinatown. So the police presence on the street is heavier than usual, and criminal activity declines.
We're starting to make inroads here, even with the community, where they're starting to trust the police, and you didn't see that before.
Police brass also tout a special effort to round up parole violators as a major factor in cutting crime. More than 4,000 parolees live in San Francisco, many of them reportedly in violation of the terms of their parole. In 1 year, San Francisco police have arrested about 1,000 parolees and confiscated a lot of drugs. All that, they say, has definitely reduced crime in the city. So, too, they claim, has the crackdown on homeless people and panhandlers, the so-called Matrix program. Popular with voters but criticized by civil libertarians, Matrix has the police moving the homeless along, rousting them from civic areas, and directing them to shelters and social services.
I have found that the crime rate dramatically dropped in the Matrix areas, but it's not just nuisance crimes that are occurring. Some of the people who are out there allegedly under the guise of being homeless were committing more serious crimes. They were committing felonies.
The tactic of targeting nuisance crimes or minor infractions with the aim of reducing serious felonies also applies to the department's prostitution abatement unit. These women who prefer not to be identified are police officers posing as prostitutes. After they make a date, other officers move in and arrest the John.
Our target is to put pressure on working girls and the pimps and the Johns in order to clean the area up.
In another attempt to reduce crime, San Francisco police have opened a new station in the high crime area known as the Tenderloin.
Are no criminals? Could you be quiet, please, sir? He's trying to get his rights registered.
Okay.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer?
The Tenderloin Task Force concentrates on a small, densely populated area, home to 4,500 children, where drugs, prostitution, and street crime abound. Community policing is practiced here. Cops on foot, like Sergeant Ken Segru, get to know the population and keep the lid on a sleazy part of town.
You got to get them up, brother. Otherwise, the wagon's going to have to come for them. We've made quite a bit of a difference now that we've been down here, but again, there's a lot of reasons why. We're closer to the community. We try to get them to do more for themselves.
By constant patrolling and making arrests of habitual drug users and drunks, police believe the area is safer than it was. For example, Sergeant Segru says this alleyway used to be a haven for crack dealers and users. But because of frequent arrests and community involvement encouraged by the cops, it has been cleaned up.
You saw me picking off 2 people. The word gets out on the street as well that if you're back here, the cops will arrest you, like as you just saw. But on the other hand, there's an involved community here that doesn't tolerate these people smoking crack or doing heroin in their alleyway, that because they've gotten so involved to help them make the changes, it's their alley.
The San Francisco Police Department's own figures show substantial declines in most categories of major crime over the last year: homicide, rape, robbery, assault, and burglary. Criminologists warn not to read too much into the numbers yet. Mike Rustigan teaches criminology at San Francisco State University.
It's very difficult to look at 1 year to say that a city has a grip on the crime problem, because that can change the very next year. But what's heartening here is to look at San Francisco's decrease in the perspective of the whole state. In fact, 10 other cities experienced a decrease in violent crime, and also nationally. So that looks impressive.
Rustigan thinks there's a danger in celebrating a short-term crime drop.
We should not get optimistic to say, well, it's down in 1 year, the police suppression programs are working, that's all we need. We need to get at the roots of crime, because with most of these career violent offenders, there's a trail that goes back as far as kindergarten.
At San Francisco's Police Academy, new officers are being trained on crime suppression and community policing. By year's end, the department will be at full strength, having added 200 officers for a total of nearly 2,000. More cops on the street, the brass believes, cuts into crime, but it's an expensive move.
And it's about $30 million more to do. But that's what the public wants, and I was able to do it without raising taxes. I did get one piece of help from the U.S. crime bill. I received $2 million, which will give us about 25 police officers for 3 years, 50% of their salaries.
Mayor Jordan, a former police chief, is proud of San Francisco's dramatic drop in crime, but he worries the decrease may not last.
Even with the crime bill, when you hear so much now about 3 strikes and you're out and more aggressive law enforcement and let's have hundreds of thousands more police on the street. Sure, they're all needed, and maybe more jails too, but not at the expense of cutting back on prevention, education, and treatment programs.
Last year, 1 out of every 27 San Franciscans was the victim of a murder, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, or vehicle theft. Even with the nation's largest drop in the crime rate, residents still fear for their safety on the streets of San Francisco.